Hindu Marriage Act 1955 marked a significant turning point in the legal landscape for Hindus in India. Enacted on May 18, 1955, this act codified and amended the laws relating to marriage among Hindus, providing clarity and uniformity. It applies to anyone who is a Hindu by religion, including Buddhists, Jains, and Sikhs. The act overrides previous customs, usages, and even certain legislative provisions, ensuring that its rules take precedence in matters of marriage. However, it respects the Special Marriage Act 1954 for marriages solemnized under that law. This foundational legislation set the stage for modern matrimonial law, balancing tradition and reform. Marriage under Hindu law is not just a social contract but a sacred sacrament. Traditionally, it is seen as the foundation of a stable society with deep spiritual significance. Hindu marriages are characterized by permanence, eternal union, and holiness. According to ancient texts, the bond between husband and wife transcends this life, continuing into the next. While widow remarriage was rare, modern influences have introduced elements of contractual consent. Today, the Hindu Marriage Act recognizes both sacramental and contractual aspects, reflecting evolving societal values. Consent is important, but the ceremony remains central, making Hindu marriage a unique socio-religious act. Debate between marriage as a sacrament and as a contract is ongoing. With the recognition of divorce and widow remarriage, the permanence and eternity once central to Hindu marriage have been challenged. However, the holy aspect persists, as religious ceremonies are still necessary for most Hindu marriages. Unlike Muslim law, Hindu marriage does not follow a strict contractual procedure, making it more of a socio-religious act than a legal contract. Consent matters, but the ritualistic element is indispensable, showing how tradition and modernity coexist in Hindu matrimonial law. Section 7 of the Hindu Marriage Act emphasizes the importance of ceremonies. A Hindu marriage must be solemnized according to the rites and ceremonies of either party. The saptapadi, or the 7 steps taken before the sacred fire, is particularly significant. Once the 7th step is taken, the marriage becomes binding. The act acknowledges the diversity of customs, allowing flexibility while ensuring the sanctity of the ritual. Ceremonies are not just formalities, they are the heart of Hindu marriage, symbolizing spiritual union and commitment. Section 8 deals with the registration of Hindu marriages. While the Act empowers state governments to make rules for registration, it does not mandate it universally. Registration provides legal proof of marriage, which is invaluable in dispute cases. The Supreme Court has ordered compulsory registration for all marriages regardless of religion to ensure legal clarity. However, omission to register does not invalidate a marriage. Registration is a procedural safeguard, not a substitute for the actual ceremony, reinforcing the importance of both ritual and legal documentation. Section 5 of the Act lays out essential conditions for a valid Hindu marriage. These include monogamy, sanity, minimum age, absence of prohibited relationships, and avoidance of sepinda relationships. Each condition serves to protect the integrity and legality of marriage. Contravention of certain conditions can render a marriage void or voidable, with legal consequences. The Act balances traditional values with modern legal standards, ensuring marriages are entered into freely and lawfully. These conditions form the backbone of matrimonial law, guiding both parties and courts. Monogamy is a cornerstone of the Hindu Marriage Act. Section 5(I) stipulates that neither party should have a spouse living at the time of marriage. Violation of this condition makes the marriage void and can lead to prosecution under the Indian Penal Code. Landmark cases like Sarla Mughal v. Union of India and Lily Thomas v. Union of India have reinforced the strict enforcement of monogamy. The Act ensures that bigamy is not tolerated, protecting the rights of spouses and maintaining the sanctity of marriage. Section 5 Roman 2 requires that both parties be of sound mind, capable of giving valid consent. Mental incapacity at the time of marriage makes the union voidable, not void. The Act distinguishes between pre-marriage and post-marriage mental conditions, offering relief through annulment or divorce as appropriate. This provision ensures that marriage is entered into with full understanding and capacity, safeguarding the interests of both parties. The law recognizes the importance of mental health in matrimonial relationships. The Act sets minimum age requirements, 21 years for the groom and 18 years for the bride. Marriages in contravention of this condition are neither void nor voidable, but offenders can be punished under Section 18. The Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006 further strengthens these provisions, repealing earlier laws. The minimum age ensures maturity and readiness for marital responsibilities, protecting young individuals from premature union. Legal penalties serve as deterrents, reinforcing the importance of age in matrimonial law. Section 5 Roman 4 prohibits marriage between parties within certain degrees of relationship. These include lineal ascendants, siblings, and other close relatives. The Act provides detailed explanations covering relationships by blood, adoption, and legitimacy. Custom or usage may allow exceptions, but generally such marriages are invalid and punishable. This provision protects against incestuous unions, ensuring genetic and social health. The law is comprehensive, considering various forms of relationship to maintain the integrity of marriage. Section 5(v) addresses sepinda relationships, which refer to connections through common ancestors. The Act defines the extent of sepinda relationships, up to 3 generations on the maternal side and 5 on the paternal side. Marriages within these limits are generally prohibited unless permitted by custom. The law includes relationships by blood, adoption, and legitimacy, ensuring clarity. This provision prevents close kin marriages, safeguarding social and genetic norms. The explanation is detailed, covering various scenarios and exceptions. Illustrate sepinda relationships. Consider the example where G is P's mother's sister's daughter. Both trace their relationship to a common ancestor through the maternal line. If both are within 3 degrees to the common ancestor, they are subindus to each other. This example shows how the Act applies the concept practically, ensuring that close kin marriages are avoided unless custom allows. The law is precise, using genealogical tracing to determine validity. Another example involves G as P's grandfather's son's daughter. Both trace their relationship through the paternal line to a common ancestor. If each is within 5 degrees on the paternal side, they are subindus to each other. This demonstrates the Act's approach to determining prohibited relationships, using clear genealogical criteria. The law ensures that marriages within close paternal kin are generally prohibited, maintaining social and genetic standards. Section 9 of the Act provides for restitution of conjugal rights. If one spouse withdraws from the society of the other without reasonable cause, the court may grant a decree for restitution. This remedy aims to restore marital harmony, offering an opportunity for reconciliation. The Supreme Court has clarified its constitutionality, stating it does not violate rights to privacy or equality. The decree suspends certain marital rights and obligations, but does not dissolve the marriage. If reconciliation fails, it can serve as a basis for divorce after 1 year. Section 11 defines void marriages. If a marriage violates monogamy, prohibited degree, or subinter relationship conditions, it is null and void. Either party can seek a decree of nullity, but it is not mandatory. Void marriages are treated as never having existed, allowing parties to remarry without legal consequences. The Act provides clarity, ensuring that marriages failing essential conditions are not recognized. This protects individuals from unlawful unions and upholds the integrity of matrimonial law. Section 12 deals with voidable marriages. These are valid until annulled by a court decree. Grounds include impotency, unsoundness of mind, consent obtained by force or fraud, and pregnancy by another at the time of marriage. If annulled, the marriage is deemed void from inception. Children of such marriages are considered legitimate under Section 16. The Act distinguishes between void and voidable marriages, offering legal remedies and protecting the rights of affected parties. Impotency is a ground for annulment under Section 12(1)(a). It refers to the practical impossibility of consummating the marriage. The Supreme Court has clarified that barrenness or sterility does not amount to impotency. If the condition can be cured and the respondent refuses treatment, it may still be considered impotency. The law ensures that marriages are entered into with the ability to fulfill marital obligations, protecting both parties. Unsoundness of mind at the time of marriage is a ground for annulment. The Act focuses on pre-marriage conditions, not post-marriage mental issues. Valid consent is essential, and mental incapacity undermines this. The law offers relief through annulment, ensuring that marriages are entered into with full understanding and capacity. This provision protects individuals from unions where consent is compromised. Consent obtained by force or fraud is a ground for voidable marriage. The Act defines force broadly, including threats. Fraud must relate to the nature of the ceremony or material facts about the respondent. The law distinguishes technical misrepresentation from actionable fraud, ensuring that consent is genuine. This protects individuals from deceitful unions and upholds the integrity of marriage. If the wife is pregnant by someone else at the time of marriage, it is a ground for annulment. The petitioner must prove this beyond reasonable doubt, often using medical evidence. The law ensures that marriages are entered into with honesty and transparency, protecting the interests of both parties. This provision addresses sensitive issues, offering legal remedies where trust is compromised. Distinction between void and voidable marriages is crucial. Void marriages are null from inception, allowing parties to remarry without legal consequences. Voidable marriages remain valid until annulled, and second marriages during their subsistence are considered bigamous. The Act provides clear remedies, protecting the rights of individuals and ensuring legal clarity. Understanding this distinction is essential for navigating matrimonial law. Judicial separation allows spouses to live apart without dissolving the marriage. The Act permits petitions for judicial separation on grounds similar to those for divorce. Mutual rights and obligations are suspended, but the marriage tie remains. If cohabitation is not resumed after 1 year, it becomes a ground for divorce. The court has discretion considering the conduct of both parties. Judicial separation offers a chance for reconciliation, balancing relief and responsibility. Divorce was unknown in traditional Hindu law, which viewed marriage as indissoluble. However, the Hindu Marriage Act introduced divorce, reflecting changing social, economic, and political realities. The Act provides grounds for divorce, balancing tradition with modern needs. This shift marked a significant evolution, offering legal remedies for failed marriages and protecting individual rights. Section 13 lists 11 grounds for divorce, available to both spouses. These include adultery, cruelty, desertion, conversion, insanity, leprosy, venereal disease, renunciation, presumption of death, judicial separation, and restitution of conjugal rights. Each ground addresses specific issues, offering legal remedies for irretrievable breakdowns. The Act ensures fairness, allowing both parties to seek relief based on clear criteria. Adultery is a ground for divorce if a spouse has voluntary sexual intercourse with someone other than their partner. The Act recognizes even a single act is sufficient. Direct evidence is not required, circumstantial evidence can suffice. Courts look for opportunity and inclination, ensuring that accusations are substantiated. This provision protects marital fidelity and offers remedies for betrayal. Cruelty, whether physical or mental, is a ground for divorce. The Act does not define cruelty precisely, allowing courts to interpret it based on circumstances. Mental cruelty includes conduct causing pain and suffering, making cohabitation impossible. Courts consider economic, social, and cultural factors, ensuring fairness. This provision addresses diverse forms of abuse, offering protection and relief. Desertion is a ground for divorce if a spouse abandons the other for at least 2 years. The Act clarifies that desertion must be intentional and without reasonable cause. Courts look for both separation and animus diserendi, the intention to desert. Constructive desertion occurs when one spouse creates conditions forcing the other to leave. This provision ensures that abandonment is addressed, offering remedies for neglected spouses. If a spouse ceases to be a Hindu by converting to another religion, it is a ground for divorce. The act includes Buddhists, Jains, and Sikhs as Hindus. Mere admiration of another religion does not constitute conversion. Formal renunciation and adoption of another faith are required. This provision protects religious identity and offers relief when fundamental beliefs diverge. Curable unsoundness of mind or severe mental disorder is a ground for divorce. The Act defines mental disorder broadly, including psychopathic conditions. The petitioner must prove that the disorder is so severe that cohabitation is unreasonable. Courts exercise caution, ensuring that mere branding is not enough. This provision balances compassion and protection, offering relief where mental health undermines marital harmony. Virulent and incurable leprosy as well as venereal disease in a communicable form are grounds for divorce. The Act no longer requires a minimum duration for these conditions. Modern medicine has changed perceptions, but the law remains cautious. These provisions address health concerns, offering relief where disease undermines marital life. If a spouse renounces the world and enters a religious order, it is a ground for divorce. Both renunciation and formal entry into a religious order must be proven. Mere declaration is insufficient. Prescribed rites and ceremonies are required. This provision respects spiritual choices while offering relief to the remaining spouse. If a spouse has not been heard of for at least 7 years, the Act presumes them dead, allowing the other to seek divorce. This legal presumption is based on convenience and adopted by the Indian Evidence Act. The decree remains valid even if the spouse is later found alive. This provision addresses prolonged absence, offering closure and legal certainty. Decree for judicial separation followed by non-resumption of cohabitation for 1 year is a ground for divorce. The Act aims to provide opportunities for adjustment but recognizes complete breakdowns. Courts ensure that relief is not granted if the petitioner is at fault. This provision balances hope for reconciliation with practical remedies. Decree for restitution of conjugal rights followed by non-restoration for 1 year is a ground for divorce. Either spouse can petition, regardless of who obtained the decree. The Act ensures fairness, offering remedies when reconciliation fails. This provision recognizes the limits of legal intervention in personal relationships. Act provides 4 additional grounds for divorce available only to the wife: bigamy, rape, sodomy or bestiality, maintenance order, and repudiation of marriage before age 15. These provisions address specific vulnerabilities, offering protection and remedies. The law recognizes the unique challenges faced by women, ensuring fairness and justice. Bigamy is a ground for divorce if the husband married again before the Act commenced, or if another wife was alive at the time of the petition. This remedy is available to both first and subsequent wives. The Act ensures that women are protected from unlawful polygamous unions, offering legal relief and justice. If the husband is guilty of rape, sodomy, or bestiality after marriage, the wife can seek divorce. These acts are criminal offenses, but conviction is not required for divorce. The Act offers protection from extreme abuse, ensuring that women are not trapped in harmful marriages. If a maintenance order is passed against the husband and cohabitation does not resume for 1 year, the wife can seek divorce. This provision recognizes the importance of financial support and independence. The Act ensures that women are not forced to remain in marriages where support is lacking. If the marriage was solemnized before the wife turned 15 and she repudiates it after attaining that age but before 18, she can seek divorce. The Act ensures that young women are not bound by premature unions, offering legal remedies for early marriages. This provision protects autonomy and rights. Section 13b allows divorce by mutual consent. Both spouses must jointly petition, stating they have lived separately for 1 year and cannot live together. After filing, a 6-month waiting period is required, though courts may waive it. Consent can be withdrawn anytime before the decree. The Supreme Court can grant relief by invoking irretrievable breakdown of marriage. This provision offers a peaceful resolution, respecting the wishes of both parties. Judicial separation and divorce are distinct. Separation suspends marital duties but does not dissolve the marriage. Divorce ends the marriage tie completely. A separation decree can be rescinded, but a divorce decree cannot. Non-resumption of cohabitation after separation is a ground for divorce. The Act clarifies these differences, guiding parties in courts. Section 16 ensures that children born of void or voidable marriages are deemed legitimate. This legal fiction protects their rights, including inheritance and succession. The Act removes stigma, ensuring fairness for children regardless of their parents' marital status. However, rights to property outside the parent's estate are limited. This provision balances compassion and legal clarity. Section 17 makes bigamous marriages void and punishable under the Indian Penal Code. If a marriage is solemnized while either party has a spouse living, it is an offense. The Act ensures strict enforcement, protecting the sanctity of marriage and offering remedies for affected spouses. Section 18 prescribes punishments for violating age-prohibited relationship or sapinda conditions. Offenders face imprisonment or fines depending on the violation. These penalties deter unlawful marriages, reinforcing the importance of compliance. The Act ensures accountability, protecting individuals and upholding legal standards. Sections 24 and 25 address maintenance during and after proceedings. Courts consider income, property, and conduct, ensuring fair support. Section 26 covers custody of minor children, prioritizing their welfare. The Act empowers courts to make interim and permanent orders, balancing the interests of all parties. These provisions protect financial and emotional well-being, offering comprehensive relief in matrimonial disputes.